Hello, MMA ladies and gents. I am Jason Burgos for Sherdog.com, and I am joined by a participant on the UFC's next event, which will take place December 7th in Washington, D.C. on ESPN. On that night, he will take his number 9 ranking at bantamweight into the Capital One Arena to face off with 13th ranked Yadong Song, and that man is Michigan's own Cody Stamann. Cody, thanks for giving me some time about a week or so out from your bout, and happy Thanksgiving to you too, man.
Well, thank you. Yeah, you too. I unfortunately won't be enjoying the Thanksgiving feast that I would like to be enjoying, but it's time to go to work.
I'm glad you brought that up. I was gonna save that question for much later, but since you brought it up, does it make like this one of the more suckier times it is for a fighter to have to go through Thanksgiving and not be able to pig out and have to be cutting weight? I mean, especially you're so close to the fight. I'm sure you're close to the process of that. That final cut. Is this just torture this kind of week?
No, honestly, it's not. I've never really been that big of a fan of the Thanksgiving
Okay.
feast. There's nothing in there that, I mean, if for Thanksgiving you had like steak and lobster and shrimp and grilled vegetables and things that I really like cared for,
Mhm.
it would be hard for me to just to sit there and not eat. But turkey and stuffing, and I don't know, I never cared much for that meal, so uh, it doesn't change anything for me, honestly. I mean, I'm so focused and ready just to get the weight cut and everything over with. I'm just counting down the days and hours until I get to get in there and take care of business.
If you had a preference when it comes to holidays and when it comes to being in fight camp for a holiday, would you prefer have a fight camp say over in Thanksgivings than say over Christmas?
Yeah, yeah, definitely. It's nice. It's nice because I've done both, so it's been pretty common in my career to fight, you know, close to this weekend, and I've always enjoyed kind of going into a new year, after having fought, and then having Christmas and the New Year to kind of enjoy myself, and then obviously everybody has that kind of that internal clock. When January 1st comes, you're ready for something to happen. So I mean, ideally, this is perfect. I'll fight in December, and then maybe fight again in January, March.
All right. Well, now you were supposed to face Rob Font in June, but that booking was canceled due to you having an injury. First, could you talk at all about that injury, and was the recovering, from the injury like one of the main reasons you have been out of the octagon for nearly 6 months now?
Yep, 100%, 100% the reason I've been out of the octagon. So it was a shoulder injury, not a surgical thing. It was just, I'm a stubborn guy. It's hard to keep me out of the gym. And, I came back a little too soon,
Mm.
kind of injured myself kind of before I was prepared. But then, fast forward a little bit, I kind of picked my whole life up, moved to Las Vegas. I started working with physical therapists at the UFC Performance Institute. I'm there for 3 weeks and I'm healthy and ready to sign a fight. So, uh, honestly, I lost maybe 2 months of the year because of that injury.
Mm.
But I mean, that's really not a lot as far as when you look at the year. I've had so much time, I had all that time to prepare for Rob Font and get better. And then after I prepared for Font, obviously I didn't get to go out and showcase my skills, but I still had, like a full 8-week training camp, to improve. And then, moving forward, I've known about this Yadong fight for almost 4 months, 3-4 months. So, yeah, as far as being an athlete, this has been a great year for me. I've had a lot of time to kind of reevaluate things and move forward and made some big changes. And I'm excited to see it all play out December 7th.
Was the shoulder injury something that you've been dealing with for a long time, or really it kind of got aggravated in camp for the Font fight and stuff like that?
It was a fall. It was a fall. I landed on it funny.
Mm.
So it swelled up and it was just, they thought that there was a fracture.
Wow.
They thought there was a fracture in my scapula.
Mm.
Luckily, there wasn't. So, the injury I sustained, I potentially could have gotten like cortisone shot or something and ended up fighting up front. But the UFC pulled me right away
Mm.
when they got the MRI results, and there was a potential fracture. They're like, "Well, you're not fighting with a fracture." And then, I learned a week later after seeing a specialist that, actually there's no fracture in this injury. It's quite as serious as what they had thought, and in the meantime, I'm in a sling. So it was just one of those series of unfortunate events, but that everything happens for a reason. And moving forward, who cares? Screw
Was
up
it,
on.
and that's frustrating enough, but was there an added frustration to not for that fight to not happen? Because Aljamain Sterling was probably the biggest fight you had to date. You bounced back from that with a big win. Font would have been another ranked fighter for you, and where win over him could have really continued you to get closer to title contention. Was that whole situation, the shoulder, not getting this big fight against a high ranked fighter, was that just compounded the frustration of the whole situation?
I wasn't really that frustrated about it, honestly, because the Font fight I didn't feel like did that much for me. Um, Font's kind of been in the game. He's done okay. He hasn't been able to compete with the guys, that are higher in the top 10. To where now I have a guy like Song, this guy. He's the next this, he's the next that. I feel like that fight's probably a better fight for me, just because of all the hype. I've been in this situation before with Tom Noir, kind of the same situation. You got a guy that's being hyped up like crazy, and when you have someone like that, there's a lot of eyes on that fight. There's a lot of people curious to see, how you're going to do against him. I think I'm an underdog in this fight, which I absolutely fucking love that. I love being the underdog. Because I've been the underdog in I think 5 of the 6 of my UFC fights. So I mean, this is like a pretty familiar feeling for me. So yeah, this is one of those. This is another one of those times in your career where you kind of have, you can really, shoot up the ladder or, fall on your face, and those are the kind of situations that I actually really enjoy being in because I get up for them.
Now, and that's I'm glad you brought that up and explain why you'd like this fight and why Font was a big deal. Because I was going to ask, since Font was, I think he's ranked 9 or something like that, or 10, and you're not getting that fight, in between now and the Song fight, did you hope to maybe get like a top 5 guy, another ranked guy? Because Song is further down in the rankings. Or did you like the fight, like you're saying, being the underdog, has a lot of hype behind him when that name was given to you, like a shit, yeah, give me that fight, I want it.
Well, I mean, look at the top 15. I think people put a little bit too much weight in these numbers.
Okay.
You know what I mean? The top 15. It doesn't really mean like, okay, I'm 9, someone else is 5. Like, really, there's not that much difference between. You know what I mean? Unless you're like, the only big difference is, like top 3. Those guys, looking at, they're looking at a belt fight. They're looking at damn near being, ready for the title. So I think everybody else is kind of always 2 fights away. You know what I mean? You can be ranked 15th, win 2 big fights, and get a title shot. You can be ranked 9th, win 2 big fights, and get a title shot. It's more or less not that important. And the number, I wanted to be in the top 10. I got super hung up on it early in my UFC career. I'm like, within a year, I'm going to be one of the best in the world. And I did that, and then I realized, these numbers don't mean shit. You get guys, you get a guy that's unranked, and he can go beat, some guy that's 38 years old, and he's for whatever reason ranked in the top 5, and also think he's ranked above you, and you're like, well, I mean, he fought a guy that's damn near retirement, and it doesn't. I don't put too much weight in it anymore.
Then and I'm glad you brought up like age and stuff like that, because I talked to Ricky Simone previously before the Faber fight. I'm actually going to talk to him after I talk to you. But a guy like Faber, out of the sport for a bunch of years, at 40, he beats Ricky, who wasn't even ranked, I believe, at the time. And he jumps right into the top 10. I know you're saying rankings aren't a big deal to you, but do you look at that like, come on, are you really top? You were top 10? I worked hard to be in here.
Is he in the top 10?
I,
Favor's in the top 10?
I don't know if he's not top 10. He's definitely in the top 15, which is still surprising after being away for so long.
Well, I mean that's the thing. I mean, how can you put that much weight in these numbers? Get a guy like him. I mean, he did beat at the time Simone was 15, so I could see if they put Faber at 15, that would make sense to me, right? That would make sense, but people, especially in the betting odds, people get really hung up on these numbers. It's like you're 8 and this guy's 9. They're like, well, number 8's higher than 9, so you automatically. I fought, with 2 UFC fights. I fought Brian Caraway, who's number 7 in the world, and went out and beat him. So, like, how much weight can you really put in these numbers? You have no idea until you get in the cage with somebody how good they really are, and that's where I think I shine. Is that when we actually really get in there, I make shit happen.
And to clarify, I just looked it up right now. He's 12 above your opponent this week. Next week coming. Yes, he's number 12 above Song. But speaking of Song, talk to me about your overall view of him. He's been very impressive in his run in the UFC, having finished 3 of his 4 opponents so far. Legitimately a high level. Is he a legitimately a high level talent in this division, or do you feel maybe he's benefited from favorable booking? What are your thoughts? It seems like you really respect him a lot.
Yeah. Well, I think both those things. He's definitely fighting guys that are tailored to his style. And then he went and fought Perez after I fought him. I pretty much laid out a pretty solid game plan on how to beat Alejandro Perez, the guy that hadn't lost in years. So I think he probably just was like, okay, this worked for Cody. It's gonna. And I was razor close to hitting him with that head kick a bunch of times. So I think they made the read. Obviously he's got a really good camp, a lot of good people around him. Smart coaches. They saw like, hey, your best weapon is the overhand. This guy's a sucker for an overhand. You can clip him with that over. So I think favorable matchups, and the kid's obviously talented. He's got good hands. He's an explosive dude. How is he going to do against a guy with 20 professional fights that's got big UFC fight experience? I think he's going to crumble. I think I'm going to break him. I think when things don't go his way in this fight, and they're not going to early, I think he's going to start to melt. You're going to get emotional. I've seen him in fights. I've seen him get emotional before, getting his feelings, and I know because I've been that guy and I made those mistakes before. It's going to end up costing him the fight. I can see it in my head. I just know. I've seen him fight. I've seen how he reacts to situations. When he gets hit, he gets emotional. When he gets emotional. I've seen it. I've seen him get stupid in there, and you can't do that at this level, man. He's 20 when he's 22 years old, 21 years old. You know what I mean? Like whether he's a raw talent, he's one of those, the next generation of guys that have been doing MMA since they could, since they've been born pretty much. You know what I mean? But there's something to be said about experience in this game. Like look at Faber. Faber's there's another guy. There's a guy. He's fighting Ricky Simone. I think Ricky Simone beats Faber's ass 99 out of 100 times. But Faber had that one opportunity, and listen, Simone made a mistake, and veterans capitalizing on that shit. They don't make mistakes in the cage. You know what I mean? Like they make all their mistakes in the gym, and when they get in the cage, they're solid. So that's what I'm gonna be. I'm gonna be the veteran in this fight, and I'm going to teach that young boy a few things.
And I'm glad you brought up experience, and it's a key factor in certain elements in this fight. Like you said, fighters from China are not known for being super strong grapplers. Like you said, some of them just come up in the sport just doing MMA or maybe just traditional martial arts. Yeah,
yeah, I guess like double leg.
Yeah, and now especially So, do you feel like he is completely outgunned if this fight goes to the mat against you? You're a very good grappler. Is he in for just being part of another world, just not on an experience level, but just the grappling level?
It's hard to say he's outgunned because he trains with a good team, and they wouldn't have took this fight if they honestly thought that. They're like, oh man, if Song gets taken down one time, he's gonna get fucking mauled on the ground. There's no way they would have fight. So I think he's definitely capable. He's definitely on the ground. I've seen him on top. He looks like he has pretty good positioning. I think he's going to be a solid grappler. The thing is like, is he going to be able to grapple with me? Like he might be able to stuff a couple shots early in the fight. Yeah. Or he might show me a knee or do whatever, but it's going to wear on him the same way it wears on everyone. Everybody thinks they can Duke and Wild was going to beat my brains in and he's going to stuff all my shots, but maybe he stuffs one, maybe he stuffs two, but eventually I'm gonna get on top of that dude and I'm gonna start beating on him, and then he's gonna get up and I'm gonna stay on him, and then eventually he's gonna crack. I see it happen to guys, and I did it to Alejandro Perez. I drug him in deep water. I made him fight my fight. He cracked. He would crack. I would beat him in the first minute of every round. I watched him crack at the seams. The only guy I haven't been able to crack yet. Brian Caraway and Aljamain Sterling, in the Sterling fight, I was the rookie making the rookie mistakes, getting emotional, making those mistakes, and in the Caraway fight, I was the dog that that made it happen against a veteran. So With that big fight experience moving forward, um, I think I'm the best in the world. I just need time to prove it.
I was gonna ask about, would you viewing this fight possibly in a way as being maybe a lose-lose because you are higher ranked, but then again, you brought up the fact that you are the underdog, and you've often been, the underdog going into this fight. Do you think in a way, some may view this as, oh, it's a lose-lose for him. He's a higher ranked guy, he's a younger fighter, but in a way, the fact that you are the underdog, there's a lot of hype behind him. Do you feel, for you at least, on a lot of levels, you have a lot to gain from this fight by smashing him? It means a lot more than maybe, like you said, maybe beating Rob Font.
Yeah. So, I think in the Font fight, I probably was going to be a favorite. So everyone goes, they expect me to win. So if I lose, like, ooh, that's not good. In the fight, I'm an underdog, and if you obviously, if you look at the numbers and you, like I said, you're putting all the weight into those numbers. Then maybe you're like, yeah, this isn't a good fight for you. But I look at it like you got a guy that doesn't have a ton of a UFC experience. I haven't seen him grapple well in any of his fights. Rob Font has way more experience. I've seen him grapple well in fights. So for me, this is a better fight than the Font fight. I think there's more. I think everyone knows who Rob Font is. Everyone's really curious to see who Song Yadong is. But right now, everyone sees him as this absolute unstoppable force. The reason I am the underdog is because obviously people think that he's the next best thing since sliced bread. But I was a 2-1 underdog. I've been a 2-1 underdog 2 other times in my career, and I won both those fights. I like my odds here, and I'm probably going to throw some money on myself because I'm that confident.
All right, fair enough. Now, there are a bunch of fighters in the sport with the nickname Spartan. Alex Nicholson from PFL told me about how he actually has some Greek heritage in his background, so he felt like in a way it made him a little bit of a real McCoy Spartan. What's your story of being called Spartan? Is it because of your background in some ways and where you grew up in Michigan? Is it like a Michigan State University connection? Like how did you get the Spartan name?
So, it's a little bit of a Michigan State University thing. Both my brother and sister went to MSU, so we're kind of a Spartan household. I grew up in Sparta, Michigan. I've been a Spartan. I've worn Sparta, and I've been a Spartan since I was a little kid. So, in a lot of ways, being the Spartan, I had some stupid ass nickname, Mr. Wonderful, that one of my coaches gave me. I couldn't stand it. So as soon as someone suggested that, they're like, hey man, you want to represent where you're from, your hometown, and I was like, yeah, I do. I'm like, but I'm never gonna live there again. But I'd like to represent where I came from, because I think we all need to have some kind of tie to our roots. So I could be the Spartan as an athlete, and then everyone started being the Spartan. I think probably when the movie 300 came out, everyone decided I'm a Spartan too. If you're 1% Greek on Ancestry.com, you're going to be the Spartan. I'm not Greek at all, but I did grow up in Sparta. I've been a Spartan since I was a little kid, so that's how that came about.
Do you feel that it makes you more Spartan than the next guy? You are from Sparta.
Listen, I think whoever the most successful Spartan is gets claim to the name. So I don't know the guys that you're talking about right now, but
well, Elias Theodoro's out of the UFC. He was probably the most famous Spartan. You're probably the number one Spartan in the UFC now.
I think I'm currently the best Spartan. So I'm the only one that can actually say that name is legitimately mine. I'm copycat Spartan.